We liked this idea of designing an office space that was non-hierarchical. We kind of joked that you could move around the office like a ghost. It wasn't about knocking and waiting to be let in. It was about literally just kind of moving through walls, which is very specific to Attabotics. I'm Dustin Cousins.
And I'm Ben Klumper. We're the principals of Modern Office of Design and Architecture, or MODA. We were approached by Scott, the owner of Attabotics, to repurpose an existing office space that was basically like an outdated 1980s oil and gas company. So very, very typical, like really ugly carpets and maroons and blues and all that kind of stuff, like the worst kind of office space you can imagine. And he came to us and he said, I want to do something that inspires innovation, something that inspires collaboration. I don't want to do like a complete open office, sea of cubicles. I want to do something really cool and interesting.
This is a tech business, so there obviously is moments where the entire business comes together, which is upward of 200 people, but there's also a lot of time when it's just individuals kind of working. So we needed to find a kind of, I guess, a hybrid between the open office of the 90s and the kind of the closed off office of the 80s. And in that, we decided to kind of look at an architecture that was defining walls, but without walls. So for us, choosing rope wasn't just on a whim. We were looking at a material that first and foremost was readily available. And second of all, was relatively economic, but was also kind of diaphanous, meaning it's not just a solid wall.
And the whole idea was to create these spaces that were, sort of in between formal and informal. So really not creating firm boundaries, but creating a space that was open and inviting and welcome, but also allowed for people to just kind of find their own way through. I should preface this by saying at the same time he was talking to us about doing a purpose-built brand new headquarters building for us. So simultaneously we were designing this space for him and also designing a new building for him. And so the intention behind all of this was, what can we design in this particular space that was sort of temporary, that could maybe be transferred to the new building once that's completed.
We really like the idea, again, of creating an office without doors. Our first obstacle was like, that's great, but there's also certain programs that need to be hermetic, which means soundproof. You can't have a boardroom where you're having a board presentation. You got literally people moving through the walls. So there was a really interesting moment where we designed these ropes to be a thickened skin around different programs. And what we did is we used the ropes, we changed the thickness between the outside and the inside skin. If you walk around the space, you'll see that there isn't a uniformity to the spacing, right? Sometimes the spacing is as close as 1 foot, sometimes it's like 6 to 8 feet. So the closer they are, the easier it is to see through, and as they spread out, because of the moire effect and just perspective, it provides a little bit more privacy. So then we developed a really interesting architectural tool where we looked at all the different zones of the office. Some zones were more public, some zones were more private, some were kind of in the middle, and it gave us kind of a tool set to begin developing a certain architectural responsiveness in the thickness of the skin of the two ropes.
The interesting thing is when we started looking at rope, we didn't realize how much we needed. So we just started designing these pavilions, these cloud-like forms, and it turns out we needed about 25 kilometers of rope, which is quite a bit of rope. So we got on the phone, we started researching where can you find this much rope, and we ended up finding this supplier. We called them up and we said, hey, do you sell rope? Yes, we do. Do you sell white polyester rope? Yes, we do. Okay, great. We need 25 kilometers, and there was just silence on the other end of the phone, and they thought we were joking, of course. But when they came to, we were able to make them understand exactly what we needed it for. We were designing this office space, and we explained the design to them. And they were very excited, they were fully on board, and I think within a month they had shipped up their 25 kilometers of rope on, I don't know how many spools of rope it was. And then we had to figure out exactly how to deploy this rope. So we had an idea, of course, how we wanted these things to look, but we didn't really understand how to manufacture these things, how to build these things. So we used a local company here in Calgary that had experience in theater design. We designed the track that attached to the ceiling, and we designed very, very specifically the number of holes in each track that would provide us with the spacing required to make these things. And then it was working closely with the rigger that we came up with a sort of economical means of deploying these 25 kilometers of rope in the way that you see now. In the meantime, having designed this space and having still the headquarters being in design process, Attabotics also had this idea of opening up a separate manufacturing facility. So we thought it would be a way of continuing the brand, a way of continuing the design ethos of both Attabotics and what we were bringing to the table. And we kind of joked that the manufacturing facility, which is actually just down the hill from here, is sort of the evil twin of this space, because we ended up using black rope for that facility.
From a design point of view, we wanted it to speak to the design in the first project for Attabotics, but morph and be a little bit different. So you can actually see that the black is the inverse of the parabolic arches kind of down the hill. So if you look at that, in this case is the kind of the void, and the positive is becoming kind of the architecture at the manufacturing facility. Ben and I were and still very much are very interested in circular design, which is basically, in our opinion, one of the most provocative ways forward for sustainable design, that talks about designing an environment that is similar to Lego. You design something with X amount of components that are all indexed. At the end of that life, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, the elements in that building are deconstructed and could produce something completely different. We were very much inspired by that. As Ben alluded to, this design, what we're seeing here today and in the manufacturing facility, was very much beta testing for the larger build that we're getting prepared for. And we wanted to design it in such a way that literally was like Lego. And I mention that because the challenge is the way that we design with our fabricators and our manufacturers is still very much antiquated. It's very much still industrial revolution, meaning you produce something, at the end of that life cycle, you take it, you throw it in the garbage, right? The challenge in that, in just communicating with people and fabricators that have done the same thing for the last 100 years, was an enormous challenge. People don't like change, right? And with change often comes risk and cost.
We talk a lot about recycling, when it comes to dismantling buildings or dismantling things. But now the trend is actually upcycling. So it's not just recycling something, it's actually taking something and upcycling it into something that is new, using components from something that is old. So it's taken a lot of trying to convince and educate clients and contractors and builders to get on board with this idea. But it really is like, it's the trend that I think is going to take us into the future in terms of architecture and construction.
Design for disassembly, circular design is the only way that we're going to get to a sustainable future.